Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are here at the Vancouver Film School Insiders Series, here at the Vancouver Campus for Digital Design. And this evening, we're here with Cyrus Arani, producer for Human Interface Design at Apple. So, Cyrus, welcome.
Thanks.
So, Apple, EA, and a career in digital design. This is something that you've been doing for quite some time. And when we think about the course through digital design and getting to where you are now, it really, for a lot of people, it begins with education. So, tracking back to the very beginning, where did this start for you?
I think it started in university. After high school, throughout high school I was concentrated on art as well as science and kind of broadly covered all my subjects. And then decided to go to UBC in Vancouver to study engineering. And mostly because influence of my family and sort of I could do it. So it's kind of like, well, it sounds pretty hard and engineers are successful, I guess. So let's give it a shot. Didn't think too much. But then quickly realized within a couple of years that looking around at my friends and peers in the program, I'm not the most passionate person in the class. I'm not the best and smartest. So this is going to be really tough.
What was that moment like for you?
Well, it was slow. It's not like one test result really showed that. But if you look around, and I guess students here realize that too somewhat, you kind of either have a knack or notice that everybody around you spending the extra hours to get it done, or the results seem more easy for them to accomplish. And so you slowly start to think like, well, if I'm not there yet, how am I going to be very successful in this even after school? So wanted to scratch the itch again in terms of design and went to just the local school of Emily Carr to show my portfolio to see, do I have anything here? Is there a program that makes sense instead of engineering? Showed my portfolio. Wasn't very good. They said right up front, yeah, you've got talent, but you're kind of copying stuff here. Nothing really too original, but you're in engineering. How about you talk to the instructor for industrial design? Didn't know what that meant either. And after taking the first early class in the summer, which is a continuing studies class, immediately realized in the first day that this is kind of the perfect overlap for me. It's technical enough, and it's kind of not necessarily just like a high art kind of program, but it's technical in terms of building things, products, and hardware, but it's also creative and artistic too. So I kind of knew immediately that this was kind of my calling of being able to overlap technology, which is half of the way I think, and then also the soft side of things and the soft side of art and design and kind of experience as well.
So at this point you have a choice, right? You can either continue on with the engineering program, you can look at something more artistic, or you can do both. Where did you go from there? I
did both. So still not so confident in one or the other, kind of just kept finishing my degree in engineering and then realized that the skills I'm learning there apply. And it's actually a strength. So if you can, in any design field, I guess it's so broad in terms of how design thinking can be applied, or visual design, or system design thinking. Like there's so many different ways that fit under the design umbrella. I leaned towards more the technical side and the engineering side of things. So just played into it as my strength, to be honest, and then focused on projects that were, for both programs, really a product that was created. So I had to build it on the engineering side, but then also it had to be beautiful and useful for real customers and think about like a real application and be something innovative.
Where did you find your inspiration while you were doing this? Like what was driving you to find that beauty inside the craft?
I just liked it, and I thought there was just a reaction if I brought some work from design school to engineering and either showed it off to my peers or through the projects. The presentation at least was 10 times better than anybody else's, and there was immediate reaction to that naturally. So I think it just naturally felt good, and I just enjoyed it. And I found myself in the projects that relied on design skills as well as solving the technical problems as well. When there was that overlap, I would get it. I would just spend more time on it, like I had seen everybody else doing early on in the engineering program, and I realized I guess if time just disappeared while I was thinking about these projects and working on them directly. And if I was spending the extra hours to do both programs at once, it just felt, it was hard, but it was just natural and easy. It just was rewarding.
So while you're doing this as well, if we take a look back at your employment history, it says that you're the co-founder of Nurio. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So that was the result of the senior project in engineering at UBC. So it was, the genesis was for the senior project, we had a choice to work with some commerce students to actually not only make a product or a project, or have a project grounded in mechanical engineering. But also, if we partnered with the commerce students at UBC and Sauder School of Business, they would also write a business plan around it and maybe turn it into something real. And so, had a great team of 6 of us during the year. We designed and built something with my engineering peers, and then they made sense of it, and it was kind of like this little energy meter you plug into the wall, told you how much electricity you're using, as well as kind of how much it costs, and it just all came together. And then we decided to, before graduating, actually incorporate it and turn it into a company. And so it was called Energy Aware back then, but now it's Nurio, and the company still exists, and in fact, Janice, my college mate, still is the CEO, and it's still thriving. So it's not the product it was, it's evolved, of course, but it's still kind of cool to feel like a grad project is a company.
And how did the design aspect of that set it apart from the other projects that were being worked on?
I think it was just good design. Like it was something that immediately, rather than technically working, we made sure, and I made sure it was something that you could picture in your home immediately, so that you would go to a Best Buy and see it on the shelf. So I think what I'd learned in design school applied on top of how it worked. We had a prototype that worked, and then we had models in parallel that actually gave you some sense of place in the home and how it would actually end up being if we magically made it into a company and turned it into a real project. So I think that was missing from perhaps other grad projects, where something novel was created and thought of, but then it was sort of an idea and then not necessarily a product yet. So I think it was kind of cool to be able to add that layer on top, and then the feedback was just great immediately. So
you talk about feedback to a certain degree, and a couple of times now you've said that you begin with the end user, the client. So when you're looking at the design process, you're early in your career. How did that inform what you're doing? Like, how did you get to that space? How did you get into the mindset of the people who are using this?
I think the key insight for that starting with the Power Tab project was realizing that what people care about is money. And so you can come up with something that measures electricity, you can create graphs and technology to, like, say you use kilowatts and you're doing better than you were before. Oh, sorry, even before that, this is how much energy you're using. But that doesn't mean anything to anybody. What means something is the bill they have to pay. So if that dollar amount is something we can influence and go up or down, and that's the currency, literally, but the actual way you explain what's happening, that was the insight, because you're thinking about it from something that really impacts somebody and is easy to explain. Do you want to spend less money on electricity? Yes. Okay, well, this product can help. So versus saying you use way too many kilowatts. So
at the core of this is basically finding the passion of your end user and driving whatever you're creating to address that.
Yeah, in that case, that worked out well. And then throughout games, and obviously what I do today, and throughout creating any kind of software service product, you have to start with the end user in mind, and kind of you can start from two sides. Either where they have pain right now and what they're using existing, you can solve that problem. That's kind of iterative and evolutionary. Or you can start with, which is harder, but some idea or some concept that, of course, nobody even realized there was a problem and there was a need, or it was solving or helping you in some way. And of course, that's another angle to kind of come at in thinking about services and products.
Okay. So you basically have created this product. You're stepping out of school and you step into a role at EA. What was that process like?
It was lucky I got the job. That was good. But I think what was great about working at EA, and actually part of the decision of either continuing Energy Aware and Nurio and the product, or joining a company, EA, was just passion. I was a huge gamer, still am. And I thought, while being young and naive still, making your own company would be cool, and obviously some of my peers still did it, I knew that I wanted to just understand how the hell a game was made and maybe make some games myself, and it just seemed to be right there. So I figured I wanted to understand that, otherwise I'd just play games for the rest of my life and not really get it, and not really know if I could make my own thing. So it was more, just at that point in time, the opportunity to make games, which I loved, was just so exciting.
So I'm going to track you back just a little bit here, because you said you were lucky. I don't personally believe in a whole lot of luck. Right. So track me back through the process. You say lucky, but what actually did you do?
I think It was sitting, yeah, now I remember. It was sitting next to, at one of the conferences where we were showing off Energy Aware in the Power tab, I sat next to a recruiter from EA, and then I think she gave her card to me, and I was like, EA, like, didn't even think about video games because I was in mechanical engineering, industrial design. That's software. That's like, I know nothing about that. But I was like, that's cool. I'd make this kind of hardware product. What would I do at EA? She goes, don't worry, just talk to me. And I think, I can't remember the details, but just went from there. And then I got a role as a development manager, which is just like a fluffy title for just get in the company and we'll figure out what to do with you later. But I was young enough, and she gave me the job and believed and saw me, I guess, present and stuff like that in that conference. And then I worked on FIFA to begin with, and just was absorbing everything and be like, oh, this is incredible how you make it. I didn't really know much even about software engineering per se, and seeing a team of 100 people produce and develop and refine, and seeing a game kind of in such a rough state before its final ship, that was magic to me. I'm like, that's crazy. I just thought you make it and you play it and it's perfect. But seeing how messy it was just was really kind of cool, and realized within 6 months was moved to be a assistant producer, which now is just a designer. So I was more like an interaction designer within the company, and then off to the races. That's where I started kind of digital design. So,
I mean, it seems like there were some applicable skills that, obviously the person that you spoke to at EA saw there. What do you think those were? What was it about that design experience, do you think, that got your foot in the door?
I think probably what she observed there is making something. So I wonder, as a student, if we hadn't had such a good senior project, we wouldn't have been at that conference or in that kind of competition to begin with. And just to take that step to get that exposure took a lot of work and a lot of kind of belief in what you're doing. And, we were one out of 20 projects. I think maybe a couple others even thought that this project can turn into something that would win a competition and therefore be exposed to more people. So we just, along with the people in my group at school, were just ambitious, and we thought, let's just not do a project for the sake of a grade. This is like a real opportunity to take everything we've learned at school, produce something real we care about, and then it just got that exposure. So just caring enough about what I was doing at the moment gave me exposure to the right people, and then it was from there, and then
you just went from there. So the idea of basically taking those skills, creating something practical,
yes,
essentially, that's the ball that you grab and run with it.
Sorry, that's totally right. I think my advice to, when I look at resumes, in fact, or when I'm hiring or looking to build teams, or at younger people especially, you don't have much. You don't have work experience, or you don't have maybe a co-op experience, or this and that. So you're not looking at the company exposure necessarily. You're all from school programs, which hundreds of people and thousands of people come from throughout the world that are similar. But if you're someone that took advantage of it at the time you had in school, whether it's here and you've produced a short film or something like that, that just is at a caliber above everybody else, that's going to stand out immediately, and that's going to break you into wherever you want to be. And in digital design, if it's a product that you're working on as part of your program and what you're doing, just give it your all. I mean, that's your chance. Don't just dial it in for the grade. Mm-hmm. Just pretend you're not even in school. You've got tools and peers and people around you that have time. You don't have money, but you have time. And you can probably make something that you just believe can turn into a company. And I think that is what you should be taking advantage of while you're here, while you're in school.
Right. So essentially take that opportunity, leverage it for as much as it can. Yeah. So you've got something to work with when you come out. Interesting.
I think one thing too, what we did, and this was just because of the class, was a combination of business students and engineering students. At this school, you've got a buffet of like every type of designer you would ever want to work with. And in fact, between digital design and film and sound and audio and technical and even producer style and project manager style program, you've got a whole company somewhere in this school. So if you're working on a project, you're like, damn, I wish this, sounded better. Or I wonder if someone with a marketing sense exists within the school itself. Can they make my project better in turn for me to make theirs better? Even though you're not asked to or forced to, you've kind of got everybody here at your disposal. So I think that's another thing too, is be pretty tenacious and resourceful. Maybe it's teachers as well. Maybe you need to go out of your way to ask for a little bit more mentorship outside of the class, hound that teacher that you admire or whoever else. So it's kind of going above and beyond. It's especially when you don't have that work experience at a company yet.
I think we've got a lot of instructors out there going, oh man, that's a lot of overtime for me right now.
For sure.
So you've created this product and you've leveraged it into a position at EA, and you spent some time at EA. Yeah. What was that like?
It was amazing. It was awesome. I think I got a chance to work as assistant producer quickly on FIFA soccer, Fight Night boxing game, SSX snowboarding, a tennis game, another boxing game, Facebreaker. So within 5 years, I worked on kind of four, 5, 6 projects that actually shipped. So it's almost more than one project a year you're actually giving to customers. So whatever I was involved in, whether I was designing the front end screens for the FIFA project, or doing audio design for tennis, or doing more project management style stuff for Fight Night because it was kind of a port to a new console, you're quickly always aware of a goal, and you hit that goal, and then you feel the feedback from the customers or press or whoever you're paying attention to. So I think very quickly it was beneficial to work at a place where I got to make things that people used quickly, and a lot of it. So I learned along those ways and kind of got tougher and more smart, I guess, throughout that process.
So you've come from this role where you're a student and you're creating your own company, and it's clearly this is your passion. And then you step into the corporate environment where the direction is being set by someone else. How do you find your passion there?
Well, there's a lot to learn, so it's okay. If they're at EA, I was starting from nothing, and so that they made great products, they made great products, and so of course I was open to learn, and that was part of the decision. When you go to a company, I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to be an entrepreneur within there. It was a commitment to figure out how I can learn from everybody around me, listen, and kind of observe how it's done. I think that was what I knew about going in. So it's kind of ego aside, and then the more I worked on more things, the more experience I got within there. So it kind of was from scratch. I mean, it was a different industry. Designing games, which is entertainment, was also very new versus kind of end product things. So I just took it as learning and put the ego aside, for sure. Okay, so looking at that, then you've got this new experience, and you're finding your passion there. And typically in a corporate environment, there is a balance of art and craft, and a lot of it is craft. So how do you find the art in what you do at that point? Well, you're paid to do that if you're a designer. I mean, so it's pretty easy. Especially, I've chosen to work in gaming at EA, which is you're creating entertainment. I mean, you have to be artistic. They're hiring you to be artistic. You're surrounded by artistic people. So it's just encouraged and it's embraced. On the craft side, it's a business too. So what you learn quickly is you are influenced and you are debating with marketing, with business, with feasibility, with technical constraints that force you to go in different ways. So you're paid to be the champion of the art and the creativity and what it is. But what you learn quickly is that what the end customer sees, if you're lucky, in some cases, is almost exactly what you felt it should be and your team felt it should be. But often it's not. It's built by someone else, and so their spin is on it, or their flavor is on it. It's built in a timeline, so it's not complete. Maybe the first version isn't exactly as you intended, but you're going to build on that. You have to, as a designer, understand that process. And that's why I kind of really reinforce how lucky I was to ship stuff quickly, is because all of those decisions and compromises impact and inform how you decide to start the next project and what you prioritize. Okay. So, last little question on that particular piece. Yeah. Thinking back to your time at EA, was there ever a time where you had a chance to put your own personal stamp on a project that you were working on? Intentionally, no. Okay. Well, no. Intentionally, yes, because I designed the front end, so you could argue the flows and stuff like that. But unintentionally, my face ended up being in the photo of me ended up being in the Create a Face feature, photo game face for the EA Sports fans out there. In the Facebreaker game, I was the producer and designer on it, so we'd put it in as placeholder, but we never replaced it, so it just went out. And so my face is there with like markers on it, and that wasn't intentional. But
and so
that's my mark.
Do you appear in the game then at that point if someone doesn't change the face?
No, I don't think so.
No,
that
okay.
would be funny. No, but it's their photo.
You're not being beat up across North America.
No.
Fair enough. So you've had this time again by yourself, and then over at EA, and then you've progressed on to a career at Apple. What was the transition like between EA and Apple?
It was exciting. So I was at EA and loved what I was doing and passionate about the projects I was on and growing as a designer. But I think it was at a funny time. It was about, not a funny time, but I was an Apple fan as always. The iPhone had come out in 2007, so when I moved to Apple it was about 2010, or started thinking 2009. And so I was just like so excited by this iPhone. I got the first, remember in Canada we got the 3GS is the first one, I think? Yeah. It was like 2 years too late, so finally got it in my hand. I was like, this is just exciting and interesting. And it was software, so I was like, wait a minute, I know how to make software now, or how to design and think about software. And the App Store was opening up, so it was just like this Wild West of new things that you could do. As well as there was a trend in gaming where Farmville and kind of these online games were starting to become popular. So gaming issue was kind of, there was more interesting things outside of making games for me personally. And so I just wanted to scratch that itch and see if, as an Apple fan, I could make it there, or what would I even do, and looked at kind of other places, but became laser focused on Apple, found out a way to get an interview in California, and then got the interview, got the job, and what helped was the experience at EA and making products and shipping products, and then figuring out how, as a producer at Apple, where I would be and what I'd be able to do there.
So how does one go about getting an interview at Apple? I'm just asking for a friend.
I can't remember. It was like LinkedIn or something, or a friend. I think maybe it was LinkedIn. A friend of a friend knew someone who was there, and it went from there. Yeah.
So a personal connection,
absolutely.
being able to find someone in the industry.
Like everybody who moves companies, it's a personal contact.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when you were looking at the interview process at Apple, was there anything that you wanted to put forward, put in front of that team to show off what it was that you'd done?
I highlighted the projects I'd worked on at EA, and it's tough when you move between companies because you can't go into detail. It's you're part of a team, so it's hard to break down exactly in particular what you did, and you can't disclose all that. But just at the top level, highlighting within 5 years, having launched 4, 5, 6 games, that I think was part of what attracted perhaps Apple. But it definitely is something that attracts me when I look at resumes, portfolios, in hiring teams and building teams. If someone's launch product, whatever it may be, something that customers really see, and there's real ability to objectively kind of figure out if it was good or not in some sense, that builds tough skin, and I think that's what they looked at, and that's what I look at for sure when looking at building teams and bringing out people to work on my projects. Looking
at the idea of portfolios in general, because these are something it's common to everyone. You know, when you are in a creative position, creative profession, creative endeavor, you have to have a portfolio. And when you are hiring for a position like that, you know, there are some specific things that we look for. So when you're looking at someone's portfolio, what do you find to be important? What do you find to be something that is successful?
For one, don't, on the home screen of your online portfolio, at least, be too creative in put up front the projects. If I just see your name and it's on a white piece, blank page, that's not, you're going to lose me in half a second. If there's a link that says projects, you want to be upfront about what it is you've been working on. That's just one personal pet peeve. And then I think when you look at each of the, when you're inviting someone to go deeper within your portfolio to the projects, there's nothing more frustrating as well than just to read the marketing blurb about it and then a bunch of pictures. You've got to describe what you personally, if you can, applied within it or did directly, and then what you took away from it. So I think you've got to create a narrative around what it is. A picture or a link to a website that you kind of were involved in doesn't help. I wouldn't know what you did or what you it sounds kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised it's still, more often than not, is something that is kind of a throw-off when you're looking at the portfolio.
How important is it to hear about someone's passion on these projects? Is that something that's important to you?
Certainly, yeah. I guess that comes across through that can come across through your web portfolio, online portfolio, but we all know, or we've been taught that, you know, make your cover letter custom and your resume custom. It's more than just changing the initial sentence to be like industry X versus industry Y. I think when you are applying for a particular company, particular job, the industry, you have to be passionate about the industry, and you also want to. Again, it sounds cliche, we've heard it, but it really stands out on your resume whether you want this particular job at this particular company. You've got to read the description that was posted very clearly. What are you asking for? Tell me why you can do that and why you want to do it. In English, it's very clear when a template is being used in either a resume or a cover letter. Even on your website, you should be able to build it to be flexible enough where perhaps there's a private view for a particular company and it highlights the projects in a different way. That goes a long way.
So I want to track back to Apple here. You have applied for the position, you've received the job, you started Apple. Your first day, your first month, what was that like?
It was great. Yeah, it was exciting. It was the first change. I'd worked at EA only, so I knew how EA ran and learned how that worked. So moving companies was shocking in some sense. You've got to start from scratch in a way in terms of your relationships, which are important, tools and all the rest of that kind of thing, and location. And for me, it was moving country. So all of that was fresh. But when I got to work and was working on what I was working on with the people I was with, it was a dream come true for sure.
So taking a look at the experience that you'd had, you know, your education in design and the experience you'd had at EA, how did you begin to apply that at Apple?
Maybe not too consciously, I guess, because I'm just trying to do what I do, and largely it was defined differently. But it was a change from game design to digital design or product design, service design, web design. So different type of design, and that was also learning as well. But what I realized, and perhaps what was exciting, was the concept of gamification and game design really is at the forefront of technology in terms of 3D graphics and AI and animation and complexity. And so applying that to an app, there's no direct correlation there in terms of too much of how you're thinking. But I think the gamification aspect was a lens I always looked at things through. And what I mean by that is, like, how do you motivate a user to keep pursuing and spending more time with what you're doing? That was part of the goal with gaming, but it also applies to apps and services and other things too. So, and I'd started within IAD, and that was very applicable in some sense when I was working on digital ads and things like that. That was very applicable and transferable.
And so you started out in IAD, and you know, obviously with that program for some time. How did your career progress from there? What was the next step for you?
Well, within the IAD group, I was a producer and worked on these IAD campaigns and it was great because I got to go across the United States and learn about that and work with creative agencies, and that was a different industry to learn about, and advertising, which I knew nothing about, but at the core it was creating these digital experiences. But then I knew within the company where I wanted to be was in the core software design teams and the software engineering teams. So I moved to the iOS group and started working on the iOS platform, which included some of the apps as well.
So over the course of your career, you've had the opportunity to work with a number of inspiring figures. We look at John McEnroe, we look at Johnny Ive, Trent Reznor, Jimmy Iovine. Did you think that your career would lead you here?
No, definitely not. But I guess within working in the spaces I was working in and gravitating towards things I loved, I think that attracts within gaming kind of sports figures like John McEnroe. That was great because I'm a tennis fan. And then of course through Apple, that's not a particular goal to work with those types of folks, but it just kind of naturally happens. What I've always tried to look for in choosing where I work and the projects I work on is it's just a personal thing, but the biggest and best as possible. When it was EA, it wasn't, for me personally, necessarily a smaller game studio or something else. EA is the biggest name in gaming, and so that was where I wanted to be. I'm not sure why or where that comes from, and likewise with Apple. And so when you're working at those two places, that's who they attract, and then paths overlap when you work on good projects. So not a goal or not even something I expected, but it happens, and it's all in working together in the service of making these great projects and products.
So looking back to the moment of doubt, right? There was this thought, you're an engineer.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you look at this and say to yourself, well, you know, I'm looking to obviously finish what I'm doing here, but I'm going to engage in something that is more creative. That's going to give me a way to express myself more succinctly in an artistic way. What do you say to someone who's experiencing that moment?
Don't ignore what you're passionate about. And I think it's easy to listen to other people and be influenced by external factors, but nobody knows what you love other than you. And it could be design, it could be athletics, it could be any kind of industry that maybe isn't so conventional, that wisdom and advice from everybody with good intentions would say, no, but think about something more stable or more well-known, in fact, too. I think there's so many new industries that we don't even know exist, or skills or roles, but the people that are filling them are people that listen to their heart and follow those paths. It took me in the middle of school to figure that out, but I'm so glad I stuck with it, because it's made the difference in my happiness and how I've been able to achieve and work where I am.
So from a design perspective, you've obviously done quite a bit in your career. How are you continuing to grow in design?
That's a good question. I think, reading sounds obvious and cliche, and this is only something recent. I wouldn't say I've been doing this throughout the past 15 years, but being influenced and just reading books. I mean, there's so much out there, and not about design per se. What's surprising is what is more refreshing, exciting, and doesn't make me fall asleep within 5 minutes of starting reading is things that have nothing to do with design or technology necessarily. Looking for books about fields that you didn't study or know nothing about is interesting, because you're learning new things, but as designers, your influence comes from places you don't even realize. And design is and should be permutating and living within almost any industry, because it's thinking about user experience. And you could argue that anything you work on has to keep people in mind and humans. So why not learn about those places and either bring thinking back, or maybe there's a new world and an industry that you didn't know about that you want to jump to. And so design sets you up, and being a designer and having design thinking and empathy for users and thinking about customers, and you're valuable anywhere you want to work. So what I try and do to keep growing is learn about things I don't know, not necessarily go deeper in what I do. I spend enough time doing that. Maybe that's not the right thing, but at this point in my career, it's kind of really what makes me read more.
So in your career in design, we have gone from the 10-foot interface, right, with the TV, to the computer screen at about a foot away. We've gone to the watch and the phone. We now have virtual reality, augmented reality. This is your opinion and not that of the company you work for, but where do you think the next step in design, where are we going next in that space?
I have no idea. That's definitely my opinion. I've had opinions in the past, they're all wrong, so there's no... like I said, at EA, it was like, at the point in the game industry's evolution, it was like, oh my God, everything's in web, and it's all Farmville, forget about, and then that still exists, but it's not the case. Everybody's making console games still, and it may have been, I don't know, recent in-app purchases, not speaking on behalf of Apple, but like, you know, that was a craze, and like, you gotta make apps free, and no, there's still time for these things to exist at once. I could think about AR and VR or talk about that, but that may be something, it may be nothing, and there's something for sure that none of us know. So the thing I do know that's coming next is I don't know, and nobody knows. So.
And what would you say to prospective design students out there trying to find the I don't know? How would you tackle it yourself coming at this a second time?
Just be influeed by things that aren't. Don't be afraid to be influenced by what you're influenced by or excited by. When younger students or people in their career ask, well, which industry do I want to go in? They're designers, so they have great skill sets. You know, you can use Photoshop anywhere. Everything is software now, so having a foundation in that can be applied to any industry. And choosing the right industry and product is the difference between you being happy and good and not. I kind of ask, like, what if you, in your news app, your favorite news app, or not Facebook, because that's all ads, but what in your favorite online place do you check every day? Like what do you wake up, you're like, oh, I have to check this site, or before you go to sleep, I have to check it. For me, it was an Apple rumor site. So it just sort of, now I'm there, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I'm here, because I just cared about that. If it's a game, if you're just so itching and excited about the new game that's coming out in a month, you probably should think about somewhere in gaming to work. If it's about film or music, or those are kind of obvious entertainment industries, but there's so many things that each of us individually care about deeply and read more about and pursue. Like, be conscious of that, step back and write it down. You'd be surprised, like, oh yeah, of course I care about that. So just, you know already, you just have to be reflective to figure that out, and don't be afraid to pursue it. I wasn't afraid to try Apple because I liked it, and it worked out. And so if whatever your version of that is, you should absolutely pursue it. Whether it's working on a blockbuster and you're a fan of Star Wars, a bunch of your alumni are on Star Wars. If you asked them this question 6 months ago, or a year ago, 2 years ago, they wouldn't have ever dreamed they'd be able to work on a Star Wars movie, but they have. And so you just have to try it and be honest with that.
So, final question. Looking back at the time that you spent at Apple and the time that you spent at EA, when was the first time that you stopped and you realized that you had felt success?
I knew I had felt great achievement. It's crystal clear in my mind. Was when I went to the first at EA early on. But when I went to electronics boutique in the Park Royal Mall, looked on the shelf and there was FIFA 06, and my name was in the credits, digitally forever. And I remember rolling through the credits, and I probably showed my whole family and my friends and stuff. But that was just significant, because it felt like, oh, I contributed to something. And not only that, I think it's relevant to everything in digital media and entertainment. These things last forever. Like, these are, someone can somehow somewhere dig up this copy of FIFA 06 in 200 years from now, maybe, and play it, and there's my name. So that just, I guess it's a little bit egotistical. That was kind of a neat feeling that I contributed some way, along with hundreds of other people, to this thing that's real and will potentially last forever.
You're part of a team that your great-great-grandchildren may actually play that product.
Maybe. I don't think, but yeah, maybe.
Excellent. Well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Cyrus Irani.
Thank you.
Producer for Human Interface Design. This has been the Vancouver Film School's Insider Series. We will see you next time.